Uh-huh.
Hey, yeah, I want to welcome everybody to the call today. What we have here is a 7 golden ring series that we started up a few months back, and we wanted to go and get this live, and we want to get this recorded. We've had quite a few requests for people who want to get on here and get the information, get some of the books that we talk about, some of the terminology. We have a lot of guys who are out there trying to get things figured out, single guys, married guys. So there's a lot of different things that you'll see on here that we've been developing over the last couple of years. Now, ordinarily, when we run these classes, Abednego is here with us, Ragnar's there, I'm the Crusader. We've got some other guys that are here too, logging in, logging off. So what I want to just say is, because we're going to talk about why we're doing this in the first place, but initially today, it looks like everybody's in some weird bunker here. We would ordinarily be in a classroom. We'd be sitting at a desk, we'd have a whiteboard, we'd have a lot of back and forth, give and take. With this coronavirus, this kind of stuff has hit us all in weird ways. So I'm in a truck driving around in a weird remote bunker in an undisclosed location like that. And that's just how we're doing this in this environment we're in. But we wanted to do this to get this out. And so I didn't really want to wait until we have perfect ideal conditions. So what we have now is we're running a live feed on this. Okay. So if you see some things that might not be exactly what you expect in a small group setting or a Bible study or whatever you're coming from, because we have people that come from church backgrounds. We have people who don't have church backgrounds. We have people who are coming from every different background. Okay. And we just thought it was really important on this to make sure it's more important for us to get this information out, is what I'm saying. Okay. And so while we're doing this, for some of those who are listening on here, we've got a couple things that we have tried to stay by, and they've worked with us in all this time. One of those is we're trying to keep this in a PG-13 environment. Okay. Now, every once in a while, because of the emotional content here, just really emotionally charged stuff. Okay. With relationships, with bedrooms, with dating, with marital status, divorce, marriage, whatever, church, this and that. There's a lot of things that some of these guests, these people bring in here. Not just us three, your hosts here, but we have other people who show up and maybe they're expecting one thing and they hear something different. So one of the things we found over the last couple of years on this is that when you deal with guys with real issues, real struggles, okay, with emotionally charged content like this, because we deal with everything. We deal with people who just got married. We deal with people who are trying to figure out a way to figure out how suicide works, all that stuff. And so when I say we're trying to stay on a PG-13 environment, that doesn't mean we have to stay there, obviously. All kinds of vernacular will jump out here and you'll hear different things. So we just try not to judge people on that. We certainly don't want to shame people when they're going through struggles. And so it's a funny deal because people will judge us from some of this content, Ragnar, that we have on here. They'll try to judge us. And then it's funny because then they'll run down to the theater and watch all kinds of rated movies with profanity flying everywhere, but they think we have some other weird standard here, you know, that. So there's all kinds of viewpoints about what we're doing here. Okay. And all we're trying to really do is raise awareness in our relationships. That's the real focus of what we're doing. And so this series is called The 7 Golden Rings of Relationship Success. Okay. Again, this is a live feed. We're running a live mic. We're not going to edit this. You're going to get what you get because we have limited access to some of the studios that are available out there right now. And so this is where we're at. We're running with this. We made that decision because we want to get this out, get this product done without worrying about some of those things that get backed up out there. Okay. So I just wanted to dive in with that as an introductory information piece on here. We've got 7 topics that we're going to cover in the next 7 weeks. Okay. And each of these classes that we do for 7 weeks, they'll be an hour and a half to 2 hours. Some will run over. They will. We'll have such content. We'll have people who send in messages and things like that they'll bring up different topics. Okay. And so that's kind of where we're at today on the 7 golden rings of relationship success. We also, there's a lot of different kinds of things that happen on this. And we just encourage you at any one time. You'll have some information, how to contact us, how to reach out to us as we go along. So if you need to send an email to us, send that out to us. You might get this long after production date. Okay, so those emails will still be good. You'll still find that. So don't be afraid to take advantage of that. So anything, Abednego, Ragnar, anything you guys are looking to have as far as start off, just comments for introduction. Anything you guys have on this?
I think it's just important to define the target listener, the target recipient of this content.
Sure.
And I mean, I think you two probably can address that, from your neck of the woods better than I at that point. But I think, you guys, if you could just define who the target audience is for this content, I think that would be helpful before we kick it off.
Yeah, Abednego, why don't you take a little bit of that and I'll follow up.
I know for me that I spent probably a good 15 years looking for this kind of content. Being in a Christian environment, I narrowed my field down to whatever I can find in a Christian bookstore, and it wasn't a whole lot of information. There was a lot of information, but not real practical. Like, I'm going to put it into use on Monday morning. It was kind of the same old all the time. You're not praying hard enough. You're not reading the Bible enough. You're not serving your wife enough. And the more I did all those things, it didn't help anything. And when we got onto this information, that's really what turned everything around for me. And so, I'm a big fan of the information just for what it's done in my life, but also because of what it's doing in other guys' lives. And what we all know is that the rate of suicide for men is astronomical. And a big reason is they're so frustrated. A lot of times just in their married life, they're frustrated. And this information that you're going to receive on this is really going to combat that in a big way. It's going to help your marriage. If you stick with it and you stick through the 7 rings, it will help your marriage if you apply it.
One of the things I'd say on this, as we get started, so people will want to have a contact. They want to send an email. They want to try to get information. Send it to Crusader1921@gmail. Crusader1921. Crusader1921@gmail. If you have comments, questions, need some help, maybe you just don't want to be on camera, be on here. You just want to go back channel and get some information, get some help. Go ahead and send that to us. Crusader1921@gmail.com. Okay. I really do, Abednego, I really do like what you're saying there. There's a lot of frustration out there now, especially with guys in the church. Okay. And we work in churches. We work with small groups, men's groups. We also work in off channels too. Whoever we find on the street is fine. And one of the frustrating things about working with church, there's a lot of shame there. I'm not going to get into that today, but that's one of the units we'll take. We'll spend a whole day talking about that in one class. It's just about shame and stuff. And so when people bring some of these issues to the church, okay, there's a lot of shame in here. And there's not a lot of functional Monday morning Jesus stuff that we can put to work, okay? And so they're sent off with this message of pray harder, read more of your Bible, and you got to stop doing this behavior. You got to stop thinking about this. You got to stop thinking about that. And what happens is there's no functional tools in that, okay? So one of the things that we're trying to do, is build a toolbox of functional things that guys can use Monday morning, okay? Functional Christianity, we call it, that we can use, all right? And that guys can go to when they're in a mess, when they're having an emotional meltdown, when they're in a crazy gap, we call it, okay? And so these are things that we have found to be successful, that we have field tested. They're proven to work in the field. And we don't want to have anything on here that's not proven, okay? That's not field tested. So we've worked with these with single guys, with married guys, with church guys, with no church guys, whatever, however you want to label all that, okay? And so there's a lot of things that we do on here that might sound really different to you if you haven't done a lot of digging around on this stuff. So that's okay. We just ask that you have some faith on this. Just go along for the ride, have some fun with this, and increase your awareness on all this stuff. Okay. So any of you guys have anything else before we start digging into things? Any comments, other?
Sounds good to me.
Ready to go.
Couple of things on this real quick. I think when, we just looked at that and that question there, why this class? Why are we doing this? There's been so many stories that we have had over the years, since we started this group, since we started developing these this content. There's been so many stories that have come up, and you just never know who's going to show up and bring out a scenario. We've seen so many different things. Okay. One of the things I think that's really helped us in terms of awareness is to ask this question, and we're going to start with this one. And I think it's always been helpful when we've started this, because the frustration on a lot of this stuff happens when we forget to ask, what are we doing? What are we playing? What game are we in here, really? And what are we trying to do? I think that really helps, because what we find so many times on this, there's frustration. Abednego, you just mentioned that. There's a lot of frustration. Well, why is there frustration? And I want to start this off, and I'm going to go here back to Ragnar here in a second, because this is something that you've really helped all of us with. But if there's frustration, if there's pain, okay, why is there pain? How does this work? What is there about pain here that that people have on that? Okay, it's because there's a gap in there. There's a gap between what your current awareness is and where reality is. And the frustration is that because when we got married, we ran down to the church house. But when people want to get divorced, they run down to the courthouse. And what I would say about that, okay, so why do you run to the church house to get married? Some people get married in a courthouse, obviously, that's fine. But if you look back at the 1950s model, everyone's getting married down at the church. And they all swear on the Bible and have their vows that they say in front of God and country, okay? Because they expect to play by certain rules, all right? Whether that's church rules or whatever rules it is, you think you're playing by some rules out there. And next thing you know, you maybe get divorce papers or you find yourself in court or whatever. So when the divorce comes, people run down here to the courthouse because they find more favorable rules for their situation, for what they want, whatever. So people change the rules midstream here without telling you, I'm changing the rules. We're going to do something else here. So we all come in on our mindset that certain things are going to happen. And we're going to play, okay, here's the rules that we're going to play, just like back in the old days, on the back of the box in the Monopoly game or whatever you want to pick on that. And then somewhere along the way, 5 years in, 2 years in, 20 years in, we find out we're playing by different rules on this thing. And so my question is on this, as we get started here, what are we really doing? Okay. What rules are we playing by? What even game are we in? Okay. So if you went and got married somewhere, you assumed there were certain rules. I don't know what rules, but everyone has their idea about what that meant. Okay. And you wake up one day and you find out, man, I guess I'm hooked up with somebody here who's playing by different rules. Okay. And it throws you into a really crazy, weird thing that we call a crazy gap here. And I'll throw that concept out here early. Now, I don't want to stay with it too long because we'll develop that later on. But I guess when you look at that, I don't think we can stay on crazy gap long enough. It's such a huge item, this awareness item. So what game are we in? Why are we even here? Why do people get so disappointed they get thrown our direction? How does this happen? So Ragnar, awareness side, some of the things that we're trying to go through and help guys with, we always find them in a mess here, in a puddle, in a meltdown. Some of these issues about frustration, we just need to back up and say, wait a minute, why are you frustrated? What game are you even playing? What are we even doing here? Any thoughts there, Ragnar, as we get started on awareness and what game we're even in? We talked about what this class is, but what are we even doing here? go ahead and comment on a few of those if you want.
I think the more you go against nature and the laws that are around you and everything, you guys are around some farm areas down there and stuff. Whenever you go against nature, and you can't accept the laws of nature, the universe, God, then I think you're going to have pain, and it creates that crazy gap because you're programmed by society to think one set of rules, but reality is a completely different set of rules. So if you're sitting there with a glass of water right now and you're really praying that it hits the ceiling when you pour it out, and then when it goes to the ground instead of the ceiling, if you can't accept that and you're frustrated about that, and you can't just be in the present moment and accept it didn't go to the ceiling, even though everything you've been taught your whole life is that the water is supposed to go to the ceiling, but every time you pour it out, it goes to the ground, and you make gravity wrong. There's where the insanity comes, because like we're talking about with men here, and a lot of the frustrations they have are relationship oriented, sexually oriented, and so they're taught the same kind of misinformation about female nature, male nature, intersexual dynamics, human dynamics, and they're taught a set of systems to keep them in more of a sheep type vibration instead of a lion or what we call alpha vibration. But these things don't work, and they don't work for either sex. And so you have the women have crazy gaps too, because they're told they're supposed to be interested in the nice, sweet guy, provider guy, who's middle of the road, middle of the bell curve, coaches a little league, cuts the grass, change oil. They're supposed to be hot for that guy, but they're actually hot for the guy next door that keeps revving his Harley too loud, and he's out there listening to Leonard Skinner at night, changing the oil on his Harley, and he's got a couple tattoos. That's the guy she gets tingles for, not the guy that's cutting the grass and walking the postal route per se. Does everything just right the way he was taught. And why is that? And nobody talks about that in public society. Why is she drawn to that guy and not the guy, the middle of the road guy? So I think that when you start going against the laws of nature, we've used before an example of, you can take the most conservative preacher in this country, and if he's going to buy a new used vehicle or used vehicle or house, and you tell him he's got to purchase it sight unseen without going through it, lifting the hood, checking the oil, the dipstick, whatever, he would think you're nuts to do that. But if you tell him you're 15 years old, 16 years old, and you want to kind of check what's going on with this young girl just to make sure there's compatibility here, that's a sin to him. He'll want to shut that down. He'll berate you for being that. That's not God's way. And so there's a lot of that back and forth, and that crazy gap is what reality is, what people respond to, the laws of nature, the laws of God, and then also you have some man-made stuff here that programs a different set of rules, and then that gap between the two is the crazy gap, and we're trying to close that gap with this concept, Andy, or Crusader.
Yeah, I really do, and I think I'll tell you what, too. Let me see if I can get this to work here. I want to put a few things up on here, okay, and want to see how this can work for us. There's a few things on here. What we're looking at, okay, 7 golden rings class. We'll just call it this, and we'll go from here. I think, let me see if I can draw this, and we have drawn this out many times, okay. When we're talking about crazy gap, because pretty soon here, we're going to go into Abednego. One of the things that we love to talk about, this alpha beta scale. And for right now, though, let me put this up here, okay. And I think what we're saying here, Ragnar, right? We have reality over here, okay. We have your current awareness on this side. Let me go back here. And I think it's a really tough deal because you're told all kinds of things out there. And one of the things that we're told is that relationships work this way. When in real life, what we find out is they work a totally other way. Okay. And so your current awareness over here, your reality over here, this is where the pain is, because everybody has some gap out here. nobody's living in true reality. Okay. This is not, so the pain is in this gap that we have between your current awareness and where reality is. And I really think it's important to put this up early. I think we've always put this up on the first class because this is where the frustration is. This is where guys have a lot of problems in their relationships. Okay. When they get thrown some weird thing in the middle of the day, in the middle of the night, whatever, and they don't know how to deal with this. Okay. And so we're going to put this up early and often here. We're going to call this a crazy gap, and we'll go back to this because all this stuff is about awareness. Okay. And I think you're right, Ragnar, is that when you're dating, you hear certain things. Okay. Well, you got to do it this way. You got to do it that way. And Abednego, one of the things that's been successful for us is to talk about, Ragnar brought up this idea here that you're programmed. There is a lot of programming out there. Okay. You're programmed at school, you're programmed at home. One of the things we know is the first 7 years of life, you just spent the whole time in programming mode, and you're just taking this whole program mode. Abednego, if you can, go ahead for a few minutes. Just talk about what this means to be programmed, how this works, how this creates a lot of issues in these relationships before we move on to the A-B scale.
Well, as far as programming, starts in the home, but in our context with church, it really hits in the church too, where all the programming is anything to do with sex is bad. I mean, sex equals dirty, sex equals bad. If you think about it, you're bad. If you look at anything that is risque in any kind of shape or form, you're bad. If a boy is experienced, oh, wow, there's something going on down here. And then mom comes in the bedroom and finds him. She freaks out. And we tend to dump shame all over something that God created to be beautiful between a man and a wife, to be a bonding agent in that relationship. And, it starts young. And the shame just keeps dumping on until this girl, now she's 20, 23, 25, and she decides she wants to get married. And her whole life, it's been bad, bad, bad. Anything that she's done, she's had to hide from everybody. And then all of a sudden on the wedding night, she's supposed to flip it on and, be totally different and accepting of all this that's going on and affectionate. And it's really hard to overcome all that programming that's just been inundated into this mind. Now, guys get the programming too, but it's almost like nature can override that for a guy. For a girl, it's different. That programming is in their heart. It's usually from people that they respect highly, and so that programming gets in there really hard and really deep. And man, there's a lot of pain that can happen from just a female perspective. And then because they bring this programming into the relationship, then that's what causes the pain for the guy, because then he's sitting there thinking, well, this isn't what I signed up for. What is going on here? I mean, she's not very affectionate toward me, and and the thing is, for the most part, she's just freaking out because there was just bad programming.
So I think it's a tough situation, Abednego. Thanks for that. I think, because when you're dealing with relationship issues, there are different components of that. There really are. Okay. But when you talk about for guys, there's a work component, a career component, there's the kids, there's whatever, the provider side. But for guys, what they're focused on is a sexual component. Okay. And because when you have a marriage or even dating, you have two people who come from different universes, different places. Just that their ideas are different. They're raised different. They went to different schools. They're just raised differently. Okay. And so to have compatibility in this area, in this sexual component here, Okay. Not even dealing with what career they have, what neighborhood they want to live, what kid, whatever. Just on this basic thing about sexual compatibility chemistry side. Okay. It creates a lot of problems sometimes. And that's why we found people. They come to us because they have all these issues. Okay. And so these are some of the things. I don't want to dive too deep. We'll get there. And we'll get to a lot of it today. Okay. In terms of, there'll be a lot of meat that we have here today. But one of the things I want to get into is that on this A-B scale, we call it the alpha beta scale, because there's a continuum out there. And so I do want to go there, but before I go there, let me just kind of lay out where we're going to be going for the next 7 weeks on this. I want to put some things up on the screen before we get into the nitty gritty on what it means to be an alpha, specifically this term compassionate alpha. Okay, and so we're going to get into that in a second. But let me put another board up on here. So I go to page 2 on this, and as we kind of get started on some of this stuff, I think when we look at this one, what I'm going to do is just give an outline. Okay, yesterday was, by the way, D-Day, so I hope you guys got all your World War II movies in on some of that.
My dad turned 80 yesterday.
80. Okay. Did you have a birthday for him?
Small one. He's not really there.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes it tough, doesn't it? Let me say that. Yeah. I'm just going to put a few of them up here. It's going to take a couple seconds. So if people need to update their notes, that's fine. Go ahead and update your notes. Get that squared away. So initially, that's today. Alpha rules all. We're going to talk about that. Okay. We're going to talk about this concept that we'll be going forward with and what that means and how we define it. There's all kinds of things. Ragnar, you brought up one archetype out there that everybody can kind of relate to. All right, tough guy, tattoos, Harley Davidson, loud music out there, Leonard Skinner, whatever. He's out here going, letting it rip. There's a lot of different ideas about what it means out here to be alpha. And we want to make sure we go over that stuff. So we're going to go over that today. We're going to hit that hard, and we're going to try to set a foundation. Okay, we're putting together some building blocks, tool blocks of things. Okay, that we're going to use. And so our first one that we're going to go for today is alpha. Alpha rules all. And so we're going to talk about this. Okay, what this means, and we're going to develop that. Next time when you come back in here, we're going to talk about the unforgivable sin. Okay, now I don't want anybody here to get freaked out when they hear this word sin. This unforgivable sin is not, it's not what you think. This unforgivable sin, we're not opening up Bible verses on that. This is about in relationships. It's the one thing that you've got to have in order to keep some spark in the relationship, to keep some mystery there. So we're going to go over that. I don't want to give anything away there, but there is a prize inside on number 2. Number 3, the number 1 irrefutable law. Okay, so there's a few things here. I'm just going to let you know this is an outline form. We can type this up and get this all nice and neat for another day. But for now, just going over on the board here. Again, what we said, this is a live feed. Okay, and so we're going to go over. We can tidy this stuff up as we go along. Number 3 and number 4 are tied together. Okay, and we'll do those in sequence like that when we come back in week 3 and week 4. The number 1 and number 2 irrefutable laws. Okay, and so there's a lot there that you don't want to miss. And but because people have all kind of different schedules, we're going to have this recorded and we're going to put this out too as we go along. Number 5, maintain emotional strength. There are a lot of things I think that people have in their minds what that might mean. Okay. And so we're going to explain what we think it means. We're going to explain how we define it. We're going to explain how we use it and how we've developed that to help guys maintain emotional strength. Number 6, in week 6 now, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, now believe me when I say this, there's a lot of sexy time in this, but we're going to have all kinds of sexy time topics woven throughout everything, even today, tomorrow, next week, whatever, whenever we're together, and we're trying to help guys, we're going to develop this as we go along. Okay. But this idea about sexy time, Abednego, you brought that up just a minute ago, referred to it, and I pulled it out of you a little bit there. This is key. And really, it belongs way up top, but you can't have this unless you have these building blocks up there. Okay. And then what I alluded to just a minute ago, I'll put this up here. Now, I'm not sure what you can see on there. Maybe some of you out there playing at home can tell me. If you're playing along at home, you can tell us what I'm looking at. But on this one, on number 7, you got to have shame relief. And we're going to talk about what that means. And we're going to talk about how we can get relief from shame, because there is a lot of shame in all this, especially on the guy side. Okay. So on this side of it here, page 2, we've got some stuff here. Okay. And how this works for us. What does this all mean to us? Okay. There's 7 different weeks, 7 different topics we're going to go through on this. And we start out today with Alpha rules all. Next week, we'll get into the unforgivable sin. That's a really fun topic. And I think it's important for all of us to understand what all that means. And so that's why we're going to dedicate a whole week to that. But you've got to have all these different parts and components. That's why we've broken it down like this. Okay. So anybody have any questions here to say about that on an overview before we get started on today's stuff about alpha, beta? Anybody have any topics about those? I'm going to go ahead and go on today's stuff, the alpha beta scale. Everybody good on this stuff? I'm going to take this screen off of here and we'll go to another one here real quickly. Page 3 here then for today. Okay. And 7 golden rings. 7 golden rings here. Number 1 thing we want to talk about today, alpha rules all. Okay. Now this sounds like, man, I don't know. I don't know if alpha rules all and all this stuff. Okay. 7 golden rings, class 1. Okay. Because we run into this problem every time, Abednego. You can get into this in a second here, but when we say alpha rules all, we're talking about relationships here, because someone always, every single time we've had this class, somebody raised their hand in the back of the class, say, I don't know, how about this scripture and how about that? And I think God rules all and God's number 1 and all of this stuff. Okay. And they start bringing up. So if you just stay with us, for a little bit on this, we're going to develop this and explain what we're talking about here. We're talking about behavior. Okay. We're talking about things that a lot of people don't want to talk about, really. All right. And we talk about this alpha model as compared to a more beta energy side, a little bit lower energy, a little bit weaker personification here, alpha versus beta on all this. Okay. As you see that going across, there's a continuum here. On the one side here, beta. Okay. On the other side here, alpha. Over here, we have maybe on the alpha side, a Clint Eastwood kind of archetype. On this beta side, you can use anybody. You can plug in anybody you want, especially our world where everybody's beta. And all over the TV and the movies and commercials, every guy's made out to be a doofus. Okay, every guy. And you go back to maybe, on Ross Geller on Friends, someone like this. Just the girls run all over him. He's real weak energy. No girls are attracted to him much. So there's a lot of different things that come up in people's minds on how they view what alpha means, what beta means. Okay. And we're going to define that in a way here with this term compassionate alpha. Okay. And we're going to talk about this a little bit. Now, this does in many ways bring up problems for church people. Okay. They're not familiar with this terminology, except for if they watched on the Discovery Channel and saw some pack of dogs out there and they talked about alpha dogs or whatever. And so Abednego, go ahead and talk about why this has created some problems and what it means to us and how we're going to decipher this.
The argument here is always that, we're made in the image of God and we're not animals. And this is animal kingdom terminology. The thing is, we're not telling men to be animals by any stretch. we totally acknowledge that we're made in the image of God. Nowhere will we ever say different. The thing with this terminology is you just automatically know. When you talk about alpha, you automatically know this is the leader of the pack. This is the dude that's in charge. And we all know what the alpha dog is. You know, I've got a few dogs here, and you know which one's the alpha dog. He runs the show. You know, he eats first. He's in control. And so, you know, when you hear that term, there's not a lot of explanation that you need to know. You know, we have to explain it for our Christian context, but you automatically know what we're talking about when we're talking about alpha and when we're talking about beta. And so there's some pushback sometimes in the Christian realm, but if people will just step back and just try to consider what we're trying to say with that, we're not saying that we're just a bunch of animals out there that can't control ourselves. That's not what we're saying. What we are saying is that there are behaviors that we see from this alpha side in the animal kingdom that relates very well to you know, our Christian walk as men. You know, we are to be leaders in our home. We're to be leaders in our community. We're to be leaders in the church. And, you know, those are all alpha characteristics. When betas are in charge, nothing really happens. And to me, to get on a soapbox here real quick, that's why women took over the church, because the alphas disappeared and the betas were in charge. And so the women took over. And I'm not saying that women don't belong in ministry by any stretch, but you know, all the alpha guys left. And so, you know, if we can bring that back, you know, we'll have a stronger church, because it's set up the way God said it. The way God said it is for men to be in charge, you know, for men to be leaders. And that's this alpha side of what we're talking about here. And so to me, it's important to keep that terminology, because everybody understands it. You don't have to go into 3 pages of explanation of what an alpha is. For the most part, we all understand it.
You know, I think too, Abednego, is that because some of these things people aren't used to talking about in church. Okay, so they have some weird visceral reaction. Okay,
Right.
that maybe they don't see this terminology that we're using in the Bible or at the bookstore or whatever, in the Bible bookstore. So it must not be scriptural. It must not be backed up by anything. So now we've had people who threaten us. Okay, we've had people in our own groups, communities, who hate us for even talking about this stuff. Okay, and I think one of the things we're going to have a delineation here, because there is a differentiation point, a demarcation point. I didn't set it up to do that, but evidently there's the 3 Ds there: the differentiation point, the delineation, the demarcation. Without getting too weird with vocabulary, Ragnar, let me bring you back in here. You were real key in helping us to develop this concept here, okay, that we call the compassionate alpha. All right, I want to just pick your brain on this a little bit, because if we just leave it alone and say alpha and beta and that's it, it's really hard, I think, okay, to get a working definition of what we're trying to do, okay? And so this idea about compassionate alpha, and I'm going to put it up here so you can see it on your notes. We're working toward this 2/3 alpha, okay, and 1/3 beta. And so, Ragnar, let me go back to you on this. This is where we want to be, right here, okay? We want to be 2/3 alpha. On the beta side, we want to be 1/3. Ragnar, go ahead and explain what this means to you and how this has helped us. We've reached a lot of guys with this, fellas, okay? And so, Ragnar, go ahead and take that away on that. Why we need both sides on this, and the percentages, and how this works in your mind.
Well, you know, the flocks are talked about a lot in the Bible, the herders and the flocks. And when you have sheep, they're pretty defenseless. There's really not a lot they can do. They can run a little bit, but they're not very fast. And so you have wolves, lions, various predators trying to get to those sheep. And what keeps those predators away are sheepdogs. And I think sheepdogs are a nice metaphor for the compassionate alpha, because they have the ruthlessness of the predator, but they also have a bit of softness and compassion of the sheep in their hearts. And so I think a sheepdog is a good example of a compassionate alpha as far as an analogy. He can go toe to toe with the predator in a second, but then he'll go calmly walk through the sheep and make sure they're safe, make sure things are taken care of, and just sit there and observe them and watch them. And in a human standpoint, you know, he can keep the kids fed. That's the beta side, and he can kill the bear that's trying to get in the door. That's the alpha side. And I think that combination is key. But I mean, just basically, you know, you want to be the sheepdog of your family or your community. And you know, we have stuff going on currently right now with all kinds of riots and things going on, and you can really see who the sheep are, who the predators are, and you can see that, you know what, the sheepdogs are kind of missing in a lot of areas right now. And so that's how I see it, kind of like a sheepdog concept.
I think, thanks, buddy. I think there's a few things on here. I drew this out. I hope you can see this on the alpha beta, what we call an alpha beta scale, the AB scale on this. Okay. I want to put this on again on the AB scale. So we all, at least we know where so there are people going to be listening, taking notes at home, this kind of thing. It's an AB scale, and this is what we refer to on this. Let me follow up, Ragnar, with this now, because I think, Abednego, here's where it creates problems. Because when people think of alpha, they have this archetype, this jerk guy out here. Okay, and that's just that's just some jerk guy. Are you telling my little boy, go out here and be a jerk, you know? And you have all these kinds of things that show up. When we go back to this term, compassionate alpha, all right, 2/3 alpha, 1/3 beta. So you've got to have over here your strength on the alpha side. You've got to have your provider side, your comfort side over here on the beta side, the beta spectrum. You just can't be running over here and just being some brutal alpha guy, iron jaw guy, 24 hours a day. This is wearing everybody out, and this isn't going to be a long-lasting relationship guy. Okay. So how this works on this, because we do. Guys say, well, no, where is the line then? Because we're trying to find out, where's this line between alpha and this alpha jerk thing out here that gives all this, it's going to give this alpha side a bad name on the jerk. Now, everybody wants this guy in the war, in the battles, because that guy goes out and kills people and he does all of this stuff. When we talk about compassionate alpha, I bring us back to an archetype we talk about, like David, King David. Well, when he started out, he wasn't King David, okay? He was shepherd boy. And just like Abednego, you know, you'll get some verses for us here in a minute. When you look over in 1 Samuel, you can find some of those, and if you can put those up or at least talk about that in a minute. But we're going to talk about David, because there was a part of him that was a killer. I mean, a big part. That's what he's known for, and that's how he got his name, really, David. But he was out herding sheep. He was a shepherd boy, okay? And whatever came in the way, it was his job to get that out of the way. So he tells about, he took on lions and bears with his own hands, and he crushed them, okay? So however that happened, I'd like to see that video. I haven't seen that video out yet, but when he's crushing bears and lions with his own hands, okay, we can kind of understand and get familiar with this idea that he killed this Goliath guy with a slingshot. I can picture that. But the idea of killing bears and lions with your hands, I don't have a good picture on that yet, but I'll just have to take it for what it is, okay? So we have David out here, if you want to use that. And I think that's the best one I've found in Scripture, to have this combination of compassionate side and alpha over here, because he had beta, he played a harp, he did all this stuff. And we're going to go into that in a minute. We're going to talk about the 5 pillars of an alpha male, and we're going to go into that in a second here. But to finish this topic up on the AB scale, where then do we know where's the line? How do we know if we're too much alpha? How do we know if we're too much beta over there? So this idea about you want to be alpha 2/3 and 1/3 beta, some people get kind of mixed up on that. So what we do to make sure we're all on the same page on this, okay? When you are trying so hard to be alpha that you've turned into a jerk, we've had this conversation many times. People, they get into, tie themselves into knots on this concept. We just try to make it real simple, okay? And what we've always said is, look, you have turned into a jerk at what point you have lost influence for Christ on this, okay? So at that point, when nobody wants to talk to you about Jesus, and when you are doing no good out there in the world for Christ, is that you have lost influence for Christ, okay? So if you're so much of an alpha that you've turned into a jerk, you've gone past that point. And I just say it's right here. I just still like this 2/3 alpha. When you have blown past that, and now you're just running over here in jerk mode. Nobody wants to talk about Jesus to anybody who's a jerk. Now you've put off everybody. You're just off-putting, okay? So if you ever saw a missionary who was a jerk, he's not going to have a big church out there. So this idea, where is this? Where's this alpha line? Where's this jerk line? This is the point where you've lost influence for Christ. So for people out there who have faith background, church backgrounds, people who want to have a small group and talk about this kind of stuff, that's where we define it. Because you can be too much alpha. And it's real situational, as we'll talk about at different times. We say David was a situational alpha on the battlefield. He's alpha, okay? But there's a time in there when he was younger where he had problems with relationships with girls. Okay, we're gonna go into that a little bit. Okay, he had struggles passing some of their what we call fitness tests, and we're gonna go into fitness tests, what we call, shorten that up, fit tests. He had struggles with that in those areas. Okay, and so on this idea here, compassionate alpha, 2/3 alpha, 1/3 beta. That's our working guidelines. That's our framework where we're coming from. So we just want to make sure we define that up front. I know we're getting into some stuff that is pretty heavy. Initially, we talked about crazy gap. We're going to hit that again here pretty soon. We just
Crusaders,
finished up. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
I think another way of thinking about this too is maybe a little clearer to some people that don't quite understand the alpha beta stuff is 2/3 warrior, 1/3 monk. Is another way of looking at that. 2/3 warrior, 1/3 monk is another visual people can have maybe to help them assimilate that in their software.
I'm going to put that up because I like it. Some of us just got finished up watching the Viking series, and I'm not going to go too much into that today. But one of the themes that kept coming back in the day, they had the warrior monk, okay? This guy's out here protecting the group. But he also had to go back in here in the back, deal with icons, translate old-timey scriptures, okay? Old languages. So he didn't just live out here with his sword fighting everybody all the time. He was a learned dude too, okay? And so I think 2/3 warrior, 1/3 monk, 2/3 alpha, 1/3 beta. There's a lot of different things how all this plays out. In fact, I'm going to put this up here, okay? I'm just going to let you know that there's some different things that come up on all this stuff. And I want you to see some of this, how some of this works on this, is that there's not just alpha beta, okay? Alpha, beta, delta, gamma, delta. I'm writing all weird stuff on here. Gamma, okay. And then we have omega, really. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, really. And so, but we're not going to try to go down every one of these. This is not the scope of what we're trying to do here today, okay? Now, you can go to other places and learn all about that, and that's fine. What we're trying to do is just say on generic terms, we're just going to say there's a continuum here. Obviously, it goes down to omega, and we're not. This is probably the last time you'll see those all up on a chart here. This is not the scope of what we're trying to do. So we're just going to use it on a generic side here, on your alpha side here, your beta side here, and that's enough to get across the points we're trying to do and talk about behaviors and talk about archetypes, okay? And that's all. But there is a whole other world out here that if you want to delve into all that, that's fine. This is not our deal. So trying to find a working relationship. We want to live here at 2/3 alpha, 1/3 beta, 2/3 warrior, 1/3 monk on this. A warrior monk, okay, as an archetype that works for a lot of us, okay? And so when we look at scripturally, when we look at the Bible then, okay, because so much of the traction we've had is working with church guys, small group that we created on this, okay? So one of the assignments we have every time is, okay, guys, go back home, come up with an archetype you can associate with, something you can have in the back of your mind to keep you stay centered when the world gets crazy, when you get thrown into a crazy gap, how you can visualize yourself. Think of some kind of an archetype. And people come back with all kinds of things. One guy will show up and say, I'll be Superman. Another guy will be Spider-Man, and somebody, whatever. So when we look at it scripturally, when you look at David, it's said in scripture over and over that he's a man after God's own heart, okay? He was tragically flawed. He was tremendously victorious also in many ways. So we're going to use him in a lot of ways as we weave through this dialogue in this 7 golden rings, okay, in this whole class here. This one, again, if you're joining us late, this is class number 1 on this, all right? David, we're going to look at for a little bit, Abednego, as we go and talk about David for a little bit. Now, to set the stage on this, we're going to go into this other topic here, okay, that's called the 5 pillars of alpha male, okay? And so we're going to go into that a little bit. Before we go there then, anybody have anything we need to clean up on this idea about alpha beta, this AB scale, 2/3 alpha, 1/3 beta? Anybody have anything?
I like to add something. Just the fact that is, in today's society, that's a unicorn. And so there's very few men in today's world, especially in the Western world, that fit that description without it being cultivated.
Yeah.
It's almost extinct. So the person that can become that 2/3 warrior, 1/3 monk, 2/3 alpha, 1/3 beta, the person that can become that has virtually no competition in the dating market, in the world. And also, it's the best guarantee that his wife won't divorce him or leave him, because she's not going to see that in her girlfriend's husbands or any other guys at work or whatever. If you truly represent and embody the principles of the passionate alpha, you will affair-proof your marriage, divorce-proof your marriage, and increase the potential for sexual activity within your marriage. And if you're single, you will stand out like a unicorn. There will be no competition, because women absolutely crave the 2/3, 1/3 man, crave him in today's society. It's absolute catnip for a woman. And so if you can get that down and in your software, internally and externally, and embody that, your world will change dramatically regarding women.
Hey, let me go back here to Ragnar, okay? And let me say this on because I think somewhere along the way we lose sight of that, what you just said. And so I want to go dig that out a little bit. I know we've got a lot of content to get to. This is your catnip here, okay? Now, here's what you're talking about. And correct me if I'm wrong and jump back in here. I know, Abednego, you've got some thoughts on this too. What we mean catnip, listen, they don't see this. It's a unicorn, what you brought up here, Ragnar. It's a unicorn, okay? They watch Hallmark Channel all day long, okay? This is common. We're watching You Got Mail all day long. This is what they're showing. This is the programming in society, on TV, in the media, whatever. And this is it. People watch this, and this is all they have in their mind. Friends, it doesn't matter. Any kind of show out there, okay? So they never see the strong 2/3 alpha side. All they have right here is just 1/3 beta, but the characters in the shows are just 100% beta. They get run over by everybody. Okay, so when you're talking about, look, catnip side, okay, a fair proof your marriage, you brought up some terms here that are pretty, emotionally charged on this. Marriages get into trouble for several reasons, okay? And I'm gonna go here and throw this topic out here real quickly. I alluded to it a minute ago. Before we get to the 5 pillars of alpha male, okay, I want to go into this other thing and put another chart up here for you and talk just for a second here, a few minutes, about what this means. A fair proof your marriage, what? Nobody told me about this when I was dating. No one told me this when I just got married. I don't know anything about it. What does this mean? Okay. One of the things that we know is that men have needs and women have needs. Everybody's got needs, whatever. Okay. That's how we're built. And one of the things that we know, we're going to talk about this in another week, so I don't want to go too wild into this thing here, okay? But I'm going to bring it up because on the 5 pillars of alpha male, it's going to come up, okay? This thing here about fit testing, okay? We've got to set the stage on what this means. Now, for women, and we'll talk about this again in week 3 and 4 about what their number 1 needs are. We'll talk about juxtaposing that against what guys' number 1 needs are. And they're not the same. They're not the same. Okay. But a woman wants to know what you're made of. A woman wants to know if she needs to stay with you. A woman wants to know if you're good for making babies. And she thought when she got married, you were something, whatever she thought. The next day, she wants to know and make sure you're still that person. A week later, a month later, a year, a week, a month, a year, whatever. She wants to know, are you still the person I thought you were when we got married? Because one thing she hates to realize is that she's got duped somewhere along the way. And so to prevent that, she has to keep testing you. Are you good for making babies? Are you good for keeping our house secure? Can you keep the bears away and put bread on the table? Can you keep doing this? Not just once for all. We got married and that's it forever. No, it's not once for all, okay? It's that she's got to know this every hour of the day. And Ragnar, go back to you on the fit test side, because on the fit test side, what you just said was, okay, you can affair proof your marriage. Let me dig that out. You can affair proof your marriage. You said it's catnip. You said these people are unicorns, whatever. Okay. And so how does she do this on the fit testing side then? Because she doesn't want to have your babies. If she doesn't think you're going to be able to pass her fit tests, fitness test, are you still good? Do we still have good fitness? And what this means, okay? And just real quickly get into that a little bit. You can follow up with that if you want to, Abednego. But this is key in all relationships. But you cannot affair proof your marriage unless you can answer this, and unless you respond to her in positive ways to pass her fit tests every day of that marriage. Then she starts looking around. If you roll over every time and she just keeps beating you up, you're not passing her fit. You're no longer fit for her to stay with, for her to raise kids with, to be the father, whatever, the DNA, all of it. Ragnar, go into that just a bit, because we're going to go here for a second with David when we look at that.
Well, she's hardwired subconsciously in her lizard brain to ensure her offspring survive, period. That's her strongest subconscious drive, to ensure her offspring survive. And so she's constantly pinging unconsciously, can this guy kill the bear? And can he keep food on the table? Can he kill the bear? Can he keep food on the table? Can he kill the bear? Can he keep food on the table? I don't care if she's a Fortune 500 CEO. If she's married and has children and she's making 10 million a year and her husband's making 12 million a year doing something else, she's still pinging him every day. Can he kill the bear? Can he keep food on the table? Even though she's got her own resources and she can do it herself, she's still wired that way. And so she's constantly testing him and seeing if he will respond in a weak way, in an uncontrolled, emotionally uncontrolled way. You know, a woman wants a guy that's in control but not controlling. So when she fit tests him, she's testing each time. Is he in control but not controlling? That's what she's looking for every time she tests him. And so there's ways to respond to that. We can get into that later on how to pass these fit tests. But she's checking his fitness as a mate and as a provider and as a protector. And so that's what she's continuously checking. Is he in control but not controlling? Every fit test, she's asking that question unconsciously.
Let me say, you just brought this cop. Can you guys see this on your screens over there?
Yeah.
All women, they're wired, they're hardwired. When we talk about programming, we're going to bring this back up, okay, again and again and again. Until we get this thing, we're programmed. And women are programmed for security, all right? And they don't want to be with someone who can't keep the bears away. They don't want to be with somebody who's going to raise weak children. They do a better job than men do. They do a better job than men do at raising offspring. They do a better job at making sure their DNA lives another generation. They do way better than men. I think, you know, there's a lot of news on this genome project 20 years ago, okay? One of the things that came out of that men as a group, men as a gender, they only participate in the gene pool. Only 40% of the men are in the gene pool, okay? It's a ballpark number. Might be 39, might be 41%, whatever. We'll just call it 40. On the women's side, I mean, they learn how to reproduce and raise kids. They can do this. 80% of the women, 80% of the women participate in the gene pool. On the men's side, it's only 40%. So women over history, that's all history. When you look at the mitochondrial DNA studies, okay? And they do a much better job on this because their main thing is keep the kids safe, make more kids, get strong men to breed with, to mate with.
Crusader, can I add one more thing on this?
Go ahead, you bet.
So a woman's sexual energy will not peak with a man until he is at that 2/3, 1/3 ratio and maintains it and passes the fit test so she knows it's real. But once she knows that's real, she will unfold sexually like she's never had in her life. Once she knows that's real, she will unfold and express herself and blossom sexually like she doesn't know how, like she doesn't think it's possible probably currently, and also that she's never experienced in her life before. Once she's around that, because it's such a unique combination for a woman, and that's what they're craving, and there's so few of those men out there, that once she sees that and feels it and once she trusts that, and the trust comes from passing the fit test, you're in control but not controlling. Once she knows that's real and that's you, then you will see her blossom sexually like you've never seen before and like she didn't expect she would be. It's that important. It's that important.
This idea here, in control but not controlling. Okay, it's 2/3 alpha, 1/3 beta. We're not control freak. We're not a power struggle here. We're not here to beat up women. That's not my deal. I love women. That's not my deal. Okay. But they're testing you. Now, on a date, this happens. This happens every time. I mean, I don't care if you're on a date. It happens every single time you pick somewhere to eat. Well, where are we going? Well, I don't know. Well, where are you going? Well, I don't know what you want to do. Finally, when you make a decision, you want to go to Taco Bell. Well, she don't want to do that. Now she wants to go somewhere else. All that is a fit test, guys. And we're going to get into that. We'll have a whole session on that, what that means. Okay. Abednego, you got anything before we move on to the 5 pillars?
Yeah, I think this is important because this is the practical stuff that we've been talking about. You know, one of the first commands that God really gave to people was to Adam and Eve, and He said, "Be fruitful and multiply." In Genesis 1, you know, be fruitful and multiply. And you know, in marriage, we know that is a huge part of marriage. You know, the be fruitful, multiply, have lots of sex. You know, in 1 Corinthians 7, it tells us to not deprive one another except by mutual consent. That the only time that you do that is for prayer and fasting, and then you come back together so that Satan doesn't have a foothold on you. You know, there's all these scripture that tells us that we need to come together as husband and wife. But if that's what you're banking on for your wife to get excited about it, it ain't going to happen. It's not going to happen. You know, you've got to have this practical information of knowing what makes her excited to be with you in that way that you want her to be with you. It's not that you know all the scripture and you can beat her over the head with the scripture. It's knowing that, you know, if I can become this guy, this compassionate alpha, this warrior monk, and she knows that, then that gets her excited about being with you. And again, that's just God's design. That's the way God designed her to respond to you, because that's the way God designed you as a man to be. We've just unraveled the design. We've reprogrammed guys in such a way that they forgot how God designed us.
So let me ask you then. So I mean, you got scriptures, you got your Bible, whatever. I mean, so that's not enough just to tell her, hey, God told us we got to go have sex here. We got to be fruitful and multiply. In everyday common vernacular, 2020, that means go have some sex, right?
Yeah.
So you mean it? So what are you talking about? It's not enough just to go tell her God told you got to have sex. I mean, what are you talking about?
Trust me, it's not enough. I've been down that road. You know, at best, what you get is what you'd call duty sex. You know, I'm going to do my duty. This is my duty as a wife. You know, at best, we've called it starfish sex, and it's quite the imagery, but just, you know, here I am. Go ahead, let's get it over with. Are you done yet? And no man wants that. You know, I've talked to lots of guys who they didn't have a problem with their woman giving them duty sex. It's not what they wanted, you know. And so you're already on it. It's the difference between a transactional sex. Okay, you're a good husband, you provided, so here you go, I'm going to give you this. That's a transaction. Or validational sex. And again, you know as a man when you've been validated. When she wants to be with you. You know, it's what is it, Cheap Trick song? You know, I want you to want me.
That's right.
That's what every guy wants.
You to want me.
Exactly. We all want that. We all want her to want you. You know, you want your wife to want you. You want your wife to validate you. But that doesn't happen just by, okay, let me quote a bunch of scripture to you. That doesn't get. It's not invoking the imagination side. It's not. She's just going, okay, well, yeah, that's what God says. So, okay, here you go. You know, and she takes the flannel, you know, off just enough to, you know, there's nothing sexy about it at all. You know, and the thing is, there's room in all this. That's what gets me excited about this information, is there's room in all this for the Christian man, for the Christian marriage, to be extremely happy and to be extremely successful, to be extremely sexual, and not violate scripture. There's all kinds of room in here for that. But we, you know, again, you've said it so many times already. We just don't talk about this, and we don't talk about it enough. And I think, you know, for a large degree, it's probably because of things that we've faced already. When you do talk about it, you just get shamed out of the room. You know, people try to shame you, people try to condemn you. People try to tell you you're just a bunch of perverts or whatever. Well, you know, I guess I'd rather be a happy pervert than, you know, somebody, a miserable saint, you know. And I really, you know, I'm not condoning violating scripture. You know, I don't, you don't have to. You can have the best sex of your life, but you have to be, like Ragnar's saying, you have to be that guy. You've got to be the warrior monk. You do. I love that, you know, that imagery of that warrior monk. I also really like, I gotta say, the sheepdog metaphor.
Yeah.
You know, I think that really does. You know, you're fierce against the predator, man. You're just relentless. But then there's that very comforting, compassionate side. I think that's good imagery too. But we've got to be that guy, and if you can be that guy, then you're gonna be one happy dude. You know, you really will.
You know,
be.
if you can't be that guy, you don't deserve your woman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't deserve any woman.
Look, it's not enough just to bring home paycheck. Okay. Just
No.
provider side.
No.
Provider side. Now we'll have this. We'll break this down another day. We want to go in some other areas, but since we're here, since you brought it up, provider side. Just bring a paycheck and expect wild transactional or wild validational sex everywhere. Look, provider side. That's on the beta. That's a beta 1/3. That gets you transactional sex. Okay. If you want validational side, you got to move all the way over here and exhibit alpha traits. Yes. Beta side, provider side, you got to do that deal. You got to put bread on the table, but you got to keep on the alpha side. You got to keep the bears away too. Okay. I just want to go ahead and clean this up real quick. Transactional side. Just so we all are really clear what's going on here on your starfish sex. Okay. I cleaned the gutter out. Why do you, well, listen, now this is going to take some people off guard a little bit too. And this will create, if we're not already into hate somewhere, well, someone will hate us on this for saying this. Listen, every guy, as far as your number one need out here is to have sex. And we're commanded this in Genesis, and be fruitful and multiply. Listen, I didn't put that in me. God did this deal. Okay. So if you don't like it, you go, yes, this is how we're built. We're programmed. If you don't, it's fine. Don't hate me on this. You go hate God or do whatever you want to do. But so we're all built to have this sexual desire. Everybody wants someone to touch your pee-pee. Okay. So why do you clean the gutter? You want someone to touch your pee-pee. And there's all kinds of ways to do this. You know, hand job, blow job, sexual activity, whatever you want to do. Okay. So if you want to hate all that stuff, I didn't create all that. Okay. But what we're talking about here is a difference between transactional side. Okay. All right. Are you done down there? You know, now listen, on your validational side, this is some wild thing flying around the chandeliers, breaking the headboards. This is what everybody wants. The validation. They're validating you as a man. Okay. So for those of you who now jumped in and hear all kinds of terminology here, yeah, we're developing this as we go. This is only class number 1. And if we're already jumping in knee deep here about touching PP and chandelier sex and all this wild stuff, this is going to be a fun 7 weeks. Okay. Believe me, this is a fun series. Okay. And each of these is going to go 2 hours, give or take. But there's a big difference between this. And you know, Ragnar, when you said, look, this is a unicorn. All right. 2/3 warrior, 1/3 monk. 2/3 the alpha side, 1/3 the beta side. Because women have given up on this already. They've given up on this idea that they can find a compassionate alpha. We can find compassionate forever. This Hallmark Channel is filled with this dude. This beta energy guy. We also know there's this wild Harley who's got his woman here and he's dragging her by the hair off to the cave. We can find that too. The question is, right, Ragnar, can we find all of that in one person? That's really where we're at on this. And so that's why
what you want to happen is you don't want to do it overtly. You want to do it by actions and the responses of people around you, and how you pass fit tests, and how you plan activities and dates, and how you lead in the house and lead elsewhere. But the ultimate test of whether or not you have gotten to that saturation point in her mind and heart yet is if she expressed to you some way, somehow, that she knows she can never find someone like you again. That's what you want to hear. And when you hear that, you are definitely maintaining the frame of that relationship, which is another concept you'll talk about eventually. But when you hear from your woman, and you can see the reinforcement from her girlfriends and family and stuff, when you hear from your woman directly, I know I can never get over losing you, and B, I know I would never find someone like you again. When you hear that from your woman, you've done a lot of things right. Now, if you can just keep that going by some of the concepts you'll teach later in these 7 rings, then you affair-proof your marriage, and you turn your bedroom temperature up dramatically, and you have she blossoms like she's never blossomed before sexually. She can't wait to give herself to you. If truly in her heart she feels that she would never get over losing you, and she would never find someone to replace you, your replacement factor is very small. She knows she couldn't replace you. She would have to downgrade if she replaced you. If she knows that in her heart, in her brain, then she's not going anywhere. And she will give you everything she can, inside and outside the bedroom. But you have to get yourself there first. Make sense?
You know, I'll tell you what, I didn't think, Ragnar, we'd get concentration gradient in class 1, but I'm going to put it up here because there is. And I'm not going to go into it today. And not sure we're going to develop that fully in this introductory 7 series program here. Okay. But he's talking about concentration gradient. Where are you? Where are you on this scale? Okay. Where do you belong on this? Okay. Are you toward the beta side? You way over there hanging out all the time? Are you way too much alpha? Okay. Concentration gradient. 2/3, 1/3, like we've talked about. Now I'm going to go back here, and we're going to get into some stuff here as far as the 5 pillars of alpha male, what we have defined that as. And there's one place right here that we find this. Okay. I don't know if you have that up there, Abednego. There's one verse we look to that mentions all of those. And so again, what we're going to talk about on this, we're going to say this is David for us in our biblical model that we uphold on this. And let me write these down real quickly. So when you read that for us, Abednego, we can look for those. Okay. Number 1 is the Lord is with him. Okay. The Lord is with him. And as we know, that is absolutely true for David. Okay. Second part of this, and we're going to break these down as we go. Second part of this is that he's a leader of men. Okay. He's a leader of men on this. Okay. Now, number 3, we're going to broke out the blue ink on this. Okay. He's a protector of loved ones. And I think, everybody knows about David. Okay. He's out here crushing everybody on this thing. And he's a killer. So let's don't think he's just hanging out at state banquets all day. This guy is a killer. Okay. He has, number 4, the ability to emote. Okay. So maybe these words are too much. To show emotion. How about that? He's going to show emotion. We know that. He wrote a huge chunk of Psalms. Okay. A lot of anguish, a lot of tears. Okay. Emotional displays here. And plays a harp. This guy's big time on here. So as we go down through here, we're going to say another term in here that's going to get some people all up in knots again. Pre-selected by women. Okay. So I want, if you have it up there, what's a book, chapter, and verse on that one here, Abednego?
It's 1 Samuel 16:18. That's where we see all these kind of grouped together in one verse. I mean, you can see it throughout his life, but that's kind of where, and that's after Saul had kind of fell out of favor with God, and God wants to anoint a new king, and so he sends Samuel to anoint in the house of Jesse, and they go through the whole selection, and Samuel keeps thinking, well, it's got to be this brother, it's got to be this brother, it's none of them, and then oh yeah, we got one out in the field, little guy, and they bring David, and God's like, that's the one, anoint him. And so then Saul's having issues because God's departed from him, and an evil spirit begins to torment him. And in verse 18 it says, one of the servants answered. So he's looking for somebody to play a harp or something to try to soothe his soul. And it says one of the servants said, I've seen a son of Jesse of Bethlehem who knows how to play the harp. He is a brave man and a warrior. He speaks well, and it's a fine-looking man, and the Lord is with him. And we kind of see all what we're talking about here kind of grouped into one place.
Abednego, it's not only do we have all this stuff in one person, because if you look at what you're talking about earlier, Ragnar, okay, it's a unicorn. How many people do you all really know where you have all this stuff in one really, who can go hang out in courts with kings and queens, okay, who can write poetry, write songs. He's written songs out here. David, he can play the harp. He can go kill a bear. He can kill a lion. All the women are crazy about this guy, as we see later when they have parades for him, okay? So there are not a lot of people who have all these traits all into one person. So when, Ragnar, you're talking about, well, women have quit looking for this guy. They just gave up. There's no modern equivalent. There are, obviously, but nobody talks about them, and they're not on the media. Okay, they're not in shows. They don't make shows about these people. So we know, Abednego, we go back and look at that. I'll list them one at a time. It says the Lord is with him. Is that checkbox on your box there somewhere in that verse?
Yeah, I mean, that's the
Yep.
last sentence of that verse 18. It says, and the Lord is with him.
Leader of men, okay. Protector of loved ones, ability to mote. This guy, the ability to mote. Yeah, they're trying to go find him because he can play the harp. Okay.
Yeah.
Now this
And I would like to.
Go ahead.
I want to add there to show appropriate emotion.
Yeah.
Not to just be like some blubbering fool, you crying at everything. But I think to show appropriate emotion.
Yeah.
To me that's super important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really do. I mean, I think people who live on the edge out there, these Da Vinci kind of people, right? They can go, and it's a tough balance. It's a tough balance because they can go fly off the handle over here emotionally. And so one of the things is to stay centered on this, okay? And so we're going to go into here in a minute before we close. We will get through this, all this content, believe me. One of the things is the 4 C's of alpha communication, the 4 C's. We're going to get into that. It's being centered, being compassionate, being confident, being charismatic. I'm going to list those all there, but if you wrote them down, that's fine. But I'm going to list them here too pretty soon. One of the things that we see, it's hard to get all of this in exactly. Archie, do you have that book, chapter, and verse here? When Saul says, okay, we got this Goliath clown out here. Anybody, hey, whoever can go kill him, we have some prizes for you guys, okay? And Archie, just break that down for us in a couple minutes about how that all played out, because he did try to deliver on that. But we see David with some, what we call deserve level issues. Archie, you have that with you, a book, chapter, and verse on that?
Yeah, I'm looking. It's in...
I think it's 1 Samuel 17, is it?
17, yeah.
Yeah.
You got Goliath every day coming out and defying the armies. David's brothers are there. Let's see. Jesse, the dad, sends David out to go send some food to the brothers and see what's going on. David comes on the scene and he's asking his brothers kind of, what in the world is going on here? Why is everybody so afraid of this dude? And so, let's see.
There's a part in here where Saul says, man, listen, okay. Because David had to come in out of shepherd boy mode, right? And he brings in a card of, what's he got in there? Cheese and meat and some milk, and he's got some stuff he's going to bring for the boys. And you're right. He's looking out, and who is this guy and what? And one of the guys there says, no, Saul said, look, man, whoever can take out Goliath, all right, you don't have to pay taxes.
You get the daughter.
You get the princess. You get the king's daughter. Okay. And the other side, that's the bet. The other side, okay. So if we win, all these Philistines over here, they're our slaves. If Goliath wins, now we got to be their slave. The whole thing here is weird that you would imagine a king looking to a shepherd boy and putting all the hopes and dreams and the future of all the Israelites on the line here. Because if Goliath wins, now all the Jewish people have to be the slaves. So this is like, dude, really? You don't even know this guy, and you're going to put your whole bet on everything on this guy? I mean, so the whole, without getting way into the mindset on that craziness, okay? So he goes out. Everybody knows how it ends. David goes. He kills Goliath. Coming back into the tent, he's still dragging this head of Goliath, which is,
which had to be huge.
Says he's a 9-foot dude. So, however, I mean, this big head here. I mean, some of us have known some big-headed dudes, but this is a big head. Okay, so he still he strikes him down in front of everybody. Then he grabs the dude's sword. Okay, all David had was a slingshot. Grabs head, cuts a head off. He drags his head into the tent with Saul. Okay, hey, where's my prize? I'm ready. What's going to happen here? The long story short is that he brings out his daughter, Saul, and says, because Miriam was his older daughter, right? And he really, when we talk about this fit test issue, okay, David right away gets into some deserve level issues. And I don't have the verse right in front of me. He says something about, hey, look, who am I? I'm just a shepherd boy. I'm not ready. Who am I to marry the daughter of a king? And he backs himself out of this. Immediately, Saul then takes his daughter away and has her marry somebody else. So David missed out on this opportunity. When we call him a situational alpha, okay, he's not alpha all the time. On the battlefield, for sure. He passes every time. He kills everybody. He just crushes everybody. When it gets time for him on a female situation to marry the daughter of the king, he doesn't feel worthy of this, and he talks himself out of this. Okay, so Saul, you're not going to marry my daughter. I want to marry her. She can marry somebody else. Okay, so he failed that fit test miserably on this. So for everybody out there who thinks David didn't ever, couldn't be the guy as far as fit tests, he's not. He's not initially. Now later, but took him a lot of. Listen, man. I think, what was that? What'd you end up saying on that? 1 Samuel 18:18, right?
1 Samuel 18:18. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Who am I?
Okay.
And what is my family?
Yeah. Well, he came from shepherding group. These are not kings. These are dudes out here in the field. And so when Saul sees him exhibit this kind of behavior, he doesn't want his daughter to marry this guy, dude. You can't provide. Now you keep the bears away, evidently. You kill this giant, but I don't know about you. So later, now here comes Michal, Saul's other daughter.
Hey, Crusader.
I
like this though, because right after this, the Saul orders his attendants in verse 22. He says, speak to David privately and say, look, the king likes you. And his attendants all love you. Now come on and be his son-in-law. I mean, even the king is like trying to reassure him, dude, you're the guy. Come on, you just cut off the head. You can do this thing. And he still can't. He just doesn't think he can.
Well, look, we've all been in these issues. Okay. Maybe your first date, maybe your third date, or maybe we feel wherever you think you are. If you think on a scale of 1 to 10, you're a 5 or a 3 or an 8, and now in front of you is some 8 or 9 hot babe, you're going to initially, until you're used to that environment, you're going to initially talk yourself out of this situation, just like David did. I don't care who you are. Because when you get into the arena in dating, in women, in relationships, this is different. This is not a basketball court, a football field. It's not out on the battlefield.
And when
Now,
she senses that you think she's above you,
yeah,
because of hypergamy, her attraction's gone.
yeah. This isn't. Now, I'm going to put this up because you're throwing big words at us again. Hypergamy. Go ahead on that. Ragnar, just give us a quick 2 seconds on what that means.
Every woman, no matter if she's the president of the United States and a multi-billionaire, wants the perception that her man is slightly above her or quite a bit above her, as far as intellect, earning power, strength, size, whatever. Or she doesn't feel safe, no matter how successful she is, no matter how much money she has. She has to have the perception that her man, in her mind, is above her.
What if we just say a couple points higher? How about that?
Yeah.
Now, look, we'll break that down later. And so, but just in terms of vocabulary, hypergamy side, okay?
If she feels that you think you don't deserve her, whereas you look at all the Hallmark movies and things like that, the guy's always, oh, you're out of my league, and he's always, and then they show the guy getting the girl. Well, that just doesn't happen in real life. I mean,
yeah.
He has to feel that you feel you deserve her, and maybe even better, but you're not mean about it. You're not rude. But a woman wants a man that other men want to be, and other women want to date. That's what she wants. And if you feel you're below her, or she feels you're below her, that's not going to check off those 2 boxes.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to who's the prize. If you're always putting her on a pedestal and telling her, I don't know how I got you, I'm so lucky, I can't ever do anything like this, and you're way up here.
It's a kiss of death.
No, listen, guys, it's a kiss of death again. Okay, Ragnar, listen, David did this. Oh, I don't deserve you. I'm just a shepherd boy out here, and he goes into this whole thing. Okay, so there's so much in here psychologically that's going on. Let me go back here just a minute. I'm going to go back to, can you guys all see that in the 5 pillars, right?
Yeah.
Now, because some of these, we just want to, as far as foundational information today, because I don't want to, I want to get this all in, okay? So the Lord is with him. I think that's self-explanatory, okay? He's a man of God. He's a leader of men. I think, again, self-explanatory. David is out here crushing everybody. They all sign up to go into battle with him. They all sign up, absolutely, okay? So I don't think we need to go into that too much. Protector of loved ones, listen, no, he's keeping everybody in order. He's crushing the enemies. He's the sheepdog out there. This is the dude, okay? Number 4, ability to emote. I think we explained this a little bit, okay? He's writing poetry, he's playing harp, he's singing, he's doing the thing. This guy has emotion all through him. It's exuding emotion, okay? But let me go on this one. Number 5, before we go into the 4 C's of alpha communication, because there's some really key stuff that we did here today in class number 1 that I think is really, really important. Number 5 is all of this, what we've been talking about, pre-selected. Pre-selected, what we mean pre-selected. Listen, women, they just operate a little bit differently, okay? And to keep this, again, in a PG-13 environment on this, okay? Men know, as we talked about, their number 1 need sexually. So when a girl walks in front of a guy, peripheral vision, whatever, we know instantly on a molecular level, is she hot? Will she be good to make babies? Will we want to mate with this girl? We know instantly in milliseconds, okay? Women a little bit differently because they want both alpha side and beta side. Men, we don't care about all this stuff all the time. For women, though, to short circuit some of that stuff, they just see what other women have already approved, okay? And then that means they're pre-selected by other women, okay? That's what that pre-selection means. They're already a winner. other girls are attracted to him. This is what women use. So you see some guy over here in the corner of the cafeteria or at the gas station or at work, and there's some babes around this girl, or there's some babes around this guy. Every girl in the place is going to want to see what's going on over here. Every girl in the place, because there's something interesting here. I want to go, lots of hot babes over. I want to go see what's going on. Other girls are interested. There's some kind of guy over here down on himself, talking to some poorly put together girl. You know, there's nothing interesting over there. Then no one's going to go check that out. It's pre-selected by women. That's what that means. David is pre-selected by women. All the gals are crazy about this. Now, when, you know, Ragnar, you said this a minute ago, and I'll go back to this other chart on here. When we look at this, hypergamy, okay. There's a discrepancy here. You got two princesses. Miriam, not impressed by the shepherd boy. I'm going to go marry you to somebody else. Michael comes along. I love David, blah, blah, blah. There's a discrepancy here in hypergamy because let me tell you, princesses, the daughters of the king, do not go to look in the shepherd ranks to find their future husband. So we got some problems here, okay? And this plagued David and Michael for the rest of their days. She fit tested him over and over and over, and he failed miserably until the end when he didn't. But at that point, no more kids. Out, girl, you're out on the couch. This thing, okay? And we see that later on when he gets to the Ark of the Covenant and he finds this Indiana Jones style, and he comes back into town and they have a big parade, and all the servants' girls and everybody in town, and there's thousands and thousands, and they're all worshiping David, you know. And they wrote songs about David. And he comes home, and Michael didn't want to have anything to do with him. Look how you shamed yourself today, praising with these little servant girls out in the street. And he finally did figure out how to pass that fit test. And he said, look, girl, I'll humiliate myself even more. And then it says right there, the next verse, they had no children to the day of their death. Okay. So that kind of tells me, Abednego, what that is. Look, he didn't want anything to do with her. And so that's what we're talking about, hypergamy. You got any comments on that?
Yeah, well, to me, that's just one of the more haunting verses in Scripture, you know, because it's so telling. You know, David has this tremendous victory. He's bringing home the ark. I mean, dude, he's the champion of champions. Everybody loves him. Every man wants to be him. Every woman wants to be with him. You know, everybody loves him. And he just wants to go home. He's had a long day, long time of it, to bring this ark back. It's been a battle. He just wants to go home and have his wife validate him. That's what he wants. I just want to go home. I want to go to my wife. I want her to validate me as a man. Everybody else is validating him. He just wants his wife to do it. And, instead she just insults him. And it's a huge fit test. It really is. But it's really, she's being awful to him. She's being really nasty. And he just evidently has enough of it, and he says, I don't care. I don't care. It was before the Lord. It wasn't before your dad or anybody else. The Lord appointed me ruler, and I'm going to do what rulers do. And if you don't like it, then all right, whatever. As long as God's okay, whatever. And to say, and Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no children to the day of her death. It tells you that they never got back together. She was a spinster, and nobody else wanted her because they were all afraid of David. And so she basically signed her death certificate right there. It's a haunting verse. It's a haunting passage.
Abednego, the deal is that I think if you don't, as a guy, if you don't pass fit tests, you're never going to get validational sex. Is what we talked about. I'll go back there again. You're never going to get this. Okay. You're never going to have any kind of validational side on this. Okay. You're just not, this is not anything that's going to happen on your side of it. Okay. And it's just one of these things that we look at Okay. On the validational side here, on the transactional side, you might get transactional side over here. You might get transactional side. Okay. That might be something that happens for you, is that God told you to have sex with me. Okay. You might get that level, just like David did. Michael was not excited about him because he could not pass a fit test. Okay. And then by the time he did pass it, it's too late for her. Now he's got too many other eyeballs looking at him. He's got too many other options. He's not going back to that old thing, that old wet rag. Okay. So I just think, guys, a takeaway from here for sure, and we're going to go around the horn here before too long, because I want to go over this 4 C's of alpha communication real quickly. Then we'll go around the horn and have our main takeaways for the day. And we'll try to finish up each day like that. But, if you're not going to pass a fit test, if you cannot stand up to your own woman and her fit testing, you're never going to have any validational sex. And the reality is your bedroom sex is going to dry up and you're going to have a dead bedroom. We got a whole session on that too, but not today. But that's what you're going to end up with. Okay. So I want to go over a couple more things here, just real quickly on the 4 C's of alpha communication. I'm going to try to get this cleaned up on the screen and make sure we have this, the 4 C's. Okay. Of alpha communication. And, this is important because I think mentally, if we don't have some kind of an idea about what we're trying to do out here, we're going to struggle. Okay. But you're going to have to be centered on this. I'm going to come back to you in a minute, Ragnar, on this to clean this up for us. Be centered. Okay. You're going to be a compassionate alpha. Okay. Compassionate. Okay. And 3 on that, confident. Okay. Now, David, we see, he was confident in every way except for with women initially. Okay. And charismatic. Let me go back to you on this, Ragnar, on that. The 4 C's: centered. You're compassionate. You're confident. You're charismatic. Let me go back to you on that. Okay. And tell us a little bit about the 4 C's there, and in our everyday modern world, what that means to us.
Well, what you see today, and obviously in the news, there's a lot of protests and things going on. You see a lot of emotionally out of control men and boys with acting with very strong feminine traits, showing their emotions. They're not stoic. They're not centered. They're not the warrior monk. They're just very emotional and screaming and yelling and losing control. And we're focusing here today on the male-female relationship, and that does not make a woman feel safe. She wants her man to be the bulwark. She wants her man to be the umbrella in the storm for her, and be a safe place for her to settle herself. And when you're screaming and yelling, and whether you're angry or you're super, super hyper excited about something, and even in a positive way, it comes off negative. You guys may remember Tom Cruise jumping up and down on Oprah's couch about 10, 15 years ago when he was falling in love. So many women instantly lost attraction for him, and they didn't understand why. Women I've talked to personally, and I explained why they lost attraction to him, and they said, you know what, you're right. Because he put his status below her. He was jumping up and down on the couch. I'm in love. I'm in love. This was Top Gun. This was Mission Impossible guy. And as soon as he did that, he lost his stardom as far as women go. He was a heartthrob, but that was so weak. That was such a weak energy for him that he wasn't centered. Now, sometimes he can lose his control with anger too. He has, but in that particular situation, he wasn't centered. He was given positive emotions, he thought, but he wasn't centered. And a lot of women, when he was jumping up and down that couch on Oprah, and if you haven't seen that, you can YouTube it and just watch. You can see his value in among women drop precipitously in 10 seconds there. And women after that the women that saw that never saw him the same, because he looked weak. He looked feminine. Tom Cruise is supposed to be stoic, jumping out of airplanes, shooting people. And he's jumping up and down on a couch on Oprah about a girl. It just was not congruent. It was not congruent with him. And that's not the kind of, that guy's not going to keep the bear away. Up until that time on the couch, every woman thought Tom Cruise could keep the bear away. Once he jumped up and down the couch, it turned their stomachs. I mean, it viscerally turned women's stomachs because he wasn't centered. Now you go back to these others, you're talking about compassionate. We've discussed that at length here. I think everybody understands what that means. That makes them feel safe. The ability to emote, that you're going to keep the kids fed. Confident means you're going to face that bear. You're going to face those challenges. When there's a noise downstairs at night, you're going to go down there and check it out. You're going to walk out in the morning in the rain and snow to go kill some meat and bring it back. You're going to provide. You're going to face down the predator. You're confident. Not just that, but you're also going to confidently come up and seduce her. You're not going to wait to be seduced. You're going to confidently seduce her. You're going to confidently plan a date. You're going to confidently be dominant with her. Not in a painful, aggressive way, but most women, by far, unless they've been abused, prefer a dominant man in the bedroom. I'm not talking about crazy stuff, but I'm talking about assertive, more assertive. They prefer an assertive man. So that confidence will lead to you being assertive in the bedroom and assertive in restaurants. When I've had my own experiences where they're trying to put us in one table and it doesn't have the best view. And I'll say, no, we're going to go over this table and just move your woman to the next table and just tell the hostess, we're going to go over here and sit for this view. And do what you have to do to make that happen. That is confident. That's assertive. The average guy wouldn't do that. Whatever the little 20-year-old hostess puts them, that's where they're going to put them. And I instantly tell them, you can't put baby in the corner, and we're going to put them over here. And so I'll put them over here. If I got to give the gal $10, we're going to go over here and sit because this is a better view. That's confident. And that makes her feel safe. And then charismatic is basically, goes back to the seduction thing. You want to be able to give her positive emotions and up and down emotions and ping her and get her attraction centers going. Give her tingles. Be seductive. Be fun. Create some laughter. Tell stories where you got her emotions high, you got her emotions low. You're surprising her. You're taking her dancing. You don't care about what people think. You're having a good time. That's being charismatic. And so all those things together, again, if you can do that, there's no competition. There's none. Zero. So that's when you see a woman, once she tests that, because it's so rare to find that in one man today, she's going to test a bunch. But once she realizes that's real, that's when you start getting the statements, I know I would never find another person like you again, another man. I've never seen somebody like you before. I know I would never get over losing you. That's when you start getting those kind of statements from a woman. Because she knows what's out there. She knows what her friends are with. She knows what she's been around her whole life prior to you. And it just eliminates all that stuff. There's no competition. And she knows it. And you don't want to abuse that either, but you just want to keep it going and cultivate it. But she knows that. And that's when all your cups are going to get filled. Because she knows she can't get that anywhere else. And it's so important. Does that make sense? You're mute, bud. Andy, you're muting.
Hey, Crusader, you're muted.
Yeah, I'll tell you, if I could just get a handle on this mute button and all this stuff. I mean, I don't know if I've ever been accused of that, as being on mute too much. But, one of the things that we could almost add another C on here for congruent, okay? Because all of these things have to flow in and out of each other. We've always talked about the 4 C's. We could easily add a 5th one, because you got to be congruent in all this, okay? You can't in the middle of a hot situation, doesn't matter if you're in a battle or in the bedroom, and say, oh, now I have to go put my other hat on. It's just not believable, okay? So when
you have to be congruent with your body language, and Cruz, in that scene, his body language wasn't congruent, and his emotions and body language weren't congruent with what he had presented for 20 years in a career up till that point. He just ruined his career in 10 seconds over a 7.
Yeah, that's it, a 7, because he's not more than a 7. And for some of you guys out there who like that kind of terminology, we're going to break that down. There's a lot of this when we talk about hierarchy, okay? We're going to break down what those mean, what those numbers mean, how you classify different things, okay? There's different ways, but we'll do that another day. but is that okay with you guys? We're going to move that to the 5 C's because you got to have congruency in this too. So I like that, the 5 C's of Alpha communication.
Can I jump back here?
Yes, sir.
One to number 4 when we're talking about charismatic.
Yeah.
And one of the things that hits in me is that's kind of being right-brained, where you're invoking the imagination. Anybody that's charismatic can evoke your emotions. They can invoke your imagination. And this is where the advice of the church really falls short, because the advice of the church is all about hitting on the left brain, the analytical side. Hey, no, this is what Scripture says. Now, you got to do this because Scripture says this. Well, the analytical side isn't really going to move you. You go, okay, yeah, that's true. And so, that does lead to maybe something. But again, it's not like what we talked about before. It's not what you want. It's the transactional. And so that part, that charismatic part is really a huge thing. I had a very wise man tell me one time, you can't have her doing algebra and get her all excited about you, and it's true. If you're invoking the left brain all the time with throwing all this stuff at her, you're not going to get anywhere with her. You're not going to get ultimately what you want and what God really created and designed for you both to have. And so you really got, that's really important, that charismatic part of being able to invoke her imagination, to get her emotions fired up towards you. And that's where, man, the validational stuff really starts clicking.
Hey,
can I ask you guys a question, Andy?
Hey, go ahead.
Crusader,
Yeah.
guys.
You bet.
One of the things here is that those 5 C's could also be labeled the 5 C's of Christ communication.
Sure.
Yeah.
You guys
Well,
can cite
we see
versions,
all of that.
but am I right in making that statement?
We see all of this.
Every one of those.
The
Sermon on the Mount. How much charisma, and centered, right?
Yeah.
How centered was he when he was dragging the cross, and getting beat? He's still centered, right? He wasn't going, oh my God, stop. That would be a different story. That'd be a different story, right?
Right. Stop! He was all on mission. Centered.
And then he's centered, and he's confident. He's charismatic. He's congruent.
Yeah.
Right.
Congruent's a big one on him on that.
Compassionate. Yeah. He's compassionate.
How compassionate do you have to be to die for someone? Yeah.
So those 5 C's are for the alpha male, and coincidentally, the compassionate alpha, and coincidentally, they're the 5 C's of Christ communication as well, aren't they?
Let me go back here too, because we talk about congruency. How about this? We never ever. Now I shot myself a long time ago in this regard, but we never see Abednego. We never see Christ out of character. You never see Jesus out of character. Okay, ever. And when we talk about congruency, if we just view it like that, you're always in character. Okay. One of the things we go back to sometimes is we look at that. I think it's Fistful of Dollars. I don't remember. It's a Clint Eastwood. And I didn't get permission from them to show this video. So as much as I'd like to, but I will send you there. Go back to YouTube and look at it. And you can just search it through that. When they shot around his mule, and then he goes back and he tells him to apologize for shooting up at the mule. And so they get into a whole big thing here. So there's a lot there on congruency. One of the things, I'll go back to, let me get a little drink here. One of the things that we want to finish up with to make sure, Abednego, we'll go with you first and just talk about what your kind of highlights for this week were.
Well, the one thing I want to say before we kind of get off of this stuff is that no matter where you're at on the scale, Don't look at this information and then go, oh my gosh, I'm so far away from where I need to be. I can never get there. This is all about just getting better each day. We're all still on that journey. I'm not sure that any of us have made unicorn status yet. But the whole thing is that journey, getting there, getting closer and closer and closer to that. It's just like our walk with Jesus. We're not perfect, but you keep striving to get closer and closer. It's taking those steps, gaining that ground, passing those fit tests. Some of you that are watching this or listening to this has never passed a fit test in your life. Well, today decide you're going to pass one. And that's taking a step closer to where you need to be. It's not going to happen overnight. This is not the magic pill. This is not, getting just the right mixture of a eye of nude and a hair of frog or whatever, and you mix it all together and poof, everything's perfect. It doesn't work that way. For some of us, it's 15, 20 years that we've dug this hole. And so now you got to start to dig out, and it doesn't happen overnight. And so take a breath, take the information in. You probably want to take the information in over and over, take the information in and begin that process. That what Crusader just put up, that You Change You, is so huge, because that's where it starts. It starts with you deciding, I'm sick and tired of where I'm at in my life. I want to change. How do I get it? What I've been trying is not working. Put this stuff to use and see if it doesn't work for you. You're muted.
One of the things we put up here, and what we just said is You Change You. Okay, Abednego, listen. You, in the international symbol for change, that triangle, a delta there, right? You change you. It's something we've always gone with hard, is that we're not perfect and we're trying to get there, but start doing something. Stop worrying about her. Start your own plan. Start your own mission. Start doing your thing. She'll come along. You don't have to look back there. She'll be there. The kids will be there. But you've got to get something in your own mind, okay, that says, I'm doing this. I got a mission. I'm doing this thing. And when you do that and you start running down the road, they'll be behind you, believe me. So that's why that's such an important thing, is this: you change you. Quit worrying about everybody else. You change you. That's where we can start today, okay? And there's so much. I know we've come on the 2-hour mark on here, but there's so much on here. I just want to make sure we all leave with functional stuff. It's what we talk about. I'll start. Ragnar, why don't you kick it off on here? When we look at what's a review, if you had to walk away from here and make sure somebody got a couple, 3 points on this, okay, what are you looking with on that as far as review points on this?
I think if you can create your North Star, your beacon for your journey as 2/3 warrior, 1/3 monk, 2/3 alpha, 1/3 beta, the sheepdog. Whatever one of those resonates with you. If you can keep that as your beacon, and then ask yourself, not just with women, but at work, with your family, dealing with other people, dealing with your own personal trials and tribulations. How would a warrior monk handle this? How would a compassionate alpha handle this? And just kind of, we've given enough material here for a checklist pretty much. And just kind of run that through your head. Is what I'm saying, doing, my body language, my temperament, is it fitting that or not? And as you increase your awareness about that, sometimes I suggest putting a rubber band around your wrist, so that when you see that rubber band 500 times a day, each time you see that rubber band, ask yourself, am I congruent with a compassionate alpha or a warrior monk? And you ask yourself that 500 times a day, every time you see that rubber band on your hand. And so that's a big takeaway, because I think if you get that down, if you get that software uploaded in your subconscious, I think you'll find a lot of this other stuff bolts on very quickly. But I think you really have to have that beacon to go towards. And if you can get that down, then you can bolt on tactics very quickly. You can bolt on a lot of tactics that get quick change very quickly. But if you're not internally that compassionate alpha, that grease spot will bleed through and it won't be congruent, and she will notice it at some point and she will lose attraction and she'll think you're a fraud. So I think it's important to upload that software as quickly as possible. Like I said, the rubber band technique is a great technique I've used off and on for years about different things. So that's the big takeaway for me.
Let me write this down, buddy, because I think on this rubber band technique, and we can get into that a little bit. I think in class 5, maintain emotional strength. Okay, I'm gonna go back to you there, and we'll get it another time. Just want to make sure we get that so the guys know what you're talking about. We get into it 5 or 10 minutes or whatever about pattern interrupt on that. Okay, and thanks, Matt. Those are really good. You're not leaving us a whole lot left here, buddy. Let me go back over Abednego on a review side, right? What do you got? What are you taking away? What has helped you the most of all this stuff here?
I think what's helped me the most is the realization that it's okay to begin to take those steps towards alpha. You know, for years and years, I was a fairly beta guy because that's the way you're supposed to be. You know, be nice, play nice, happy wife, happy life, those kind of things. It's okay. It's okay to be alpha. If you've been beta for a long time, you're gonna feel like a super jerk when you start taking those steps. You're gonna feel like you're almost cruel to a degree. But as it's been pointed out to me, that I've had a surgery recently, and you know, my doctor had to be pretty cruel to get in there, to make that incision, to cut in and cut things out. And you know, he had to be cruel to be kind. He had to be cruel to be compassionate. And you know, it's not like we're not telling anybody to be cruel by any stretch, but you're gonna feel that way because you've been beta for so long. And it's okay. It's okay to be alpha. Once you start taking those steps, you're gonna see that in how she responds to you, and then you're gonna know that it's okay. So you really need to read your wife as you're going through this. But that's my big thing, man, is that it takes time, and don't be afraid to move a little bit alpha. The whole reason that you're in the situation you're into is because you've done the beta slide. You've slid back into beta. And so at some point you were alpha enough to attract her, to get her to think that you're the guy, that you're going to slay the bears and you're going to put food on the table. And at some point you've slid back, and you need to start to take that ground back. And again, it's going to feel like you're being cruel, that you're being mean and everything else. And she's going to fit test you like crazy, because she's going to want to know, is this really you? Are you really changing? Are you really going to be this guy? I don't know, because you've not been the guy. So they test you hard, and you got to pass those tests, and you keep passing those tests, and little by little you take the ground back.
Well said.
Abednego, let me. You said some things there. I just want to go make sure we're here on the A/B scale here. Okay, beta there, alpha here. And what you said is taking back alpha, whatever. Let me say this. If we're trying to be here, and today you find yourself over here, way down the beta, we talk about the beta slide. You slid all the way back here, okay, down the beta side. You wake up, and now you're here after you have some awareness now. And what? I'm way down here on the beta side. You slid way down. Yeah. Now listen, the only way you're going to get over here, the only way, right, is you got to start passing some fit tests, because she views you now way over here. So you pass a fit test. Now you raise up in her estimation a little bit. Pass another fit test. So you're getting this real estate back, but you can't go back here unless you pass fit tests, because she'll always view you as weaker. That's her estimation of you, okay? And it's not, she doesn't remember all those data points. What have you done for me lately? This deal. because every day you have to prove it every hour. So you fail a fit test. Oh, she doesn't remember this deal. Okay, you fail another fit test. She doesn't remember. Oh, no, you just go back here. So every day we're doing this thing, right? And Abednego, you know, it's okay to move towards Alpha. God wants that for you to be here. Not some brutal guy, idiot jerk over here. Not that guy.
It's all about the intention. I mean, if the intention is to save the organism, if that's the intention, then to be, you know, ruthless for a small amount of time in order to save the organism, which is what he was talking about with the surgery earlier. I mean, you're trying to save the organism. So if you're married, you're trying to save the marriage. You're trying to save the organism.
Yeah.
The organism has a cancer right now that has to be taken out. It's got an abscess that has to be drained. You know, and you have, so it's all about intention. If your intention is just to hurt this person and to detonate this relationship, that's not honorable. But if your intention with the same behavior, your intention behind it though, is to save this organism and to increase attraction on both sides and longevity and happiness and fulfillment, then your intention, same action, but different intention. I think this is really important, the right intention. Yeah.
I think it's really good. Let me as far as intention, that's something we will revisit on that again. Okay. And so one of the things, I think there's a few things I want to say on the review side of this. Okay. Because I think some of this is so new to people that many of you, I promise you, many of you here today need to go get some weird shock therapy now because you've had too much information. Your awareness has changed. These guys are on here, a bunch of weird guys named weird things, saying crazy stuff. Here's what I do know, okay, is that you've got to start somewhere, okay? On class 1, this is a lot of stuff for one class, okay? One of the things that's helped our guys, I'm going to recommend this too. We're going to have 3 books that we recommend in this initial curriculum here, this initial program of 7 weeks. So this book here, you can get this on Amazon, you can get the audio, you can get No More Mr. Nice Guy. Okay, Abednego, you're talking about this. Go ahead and start. Go ahead and start moving toward Alpha, but you've got to put yourself first so that they know who the leader is, that they know you have a plan. And one of the things we say, no plan, you're no man. No plan, no man. Okay, so No More Mr. Nice Guy, Robert Glover. Okay, it's on Amazon, tremendous book. So I'm going to put these books up here now just because some of the people out there are going to say, you know, this is all a bunch of weird stuff. Okay, I just am not sure where we're at on here. So No More Mr. Nice Guy, okay, is what we recommend first. No More Mr. Nice Guy. And that gives you, listen, there's a lot of stuff in there. Okay, and it gives you a good foundation on where to go. The second one we recommend is tremendous. The Ultimate Secrets of Total Self-Confidence. You can get this. It's maybe $9, $10. Ultimate Secrets of Total Self-Confidence right here. Dr. Robert Anthony. This has been tremendous for our guys. Okay, self-confidence. You get a huge dose of awareness on this too. So if you want to go ahead and get your reading list, if you want to get started on this stuff during the week or somewhere we've piqued your interest in this enough, this is the second book that we go with, The Ultimate Secrets of Total Self-Confidence, Robert Anthony. Tremendous book, okay? And I'm going to write all that down, but Ultimate Secrets, okay? And Secrets, Total Self-Confidence. And because these are things that we're building the core. Okay, what Ragnar had said is that once you get this core established, now, see, we can bolt on a lot of things, but you got to get this foundation down first, okay? The one everybody really likes and talks about, it's this third book, okay, and we call it Married Man. And now this is certainly not going to be found in a church bookstore somewhere, Bible bookstore. But this is as impactful as a book that I've read in my life, maybe top 5, I'm sure, in my life. You guys can speak on your own level about it, but this is 350 pages or so, okay? Married Man, Sex Life Primer 2011, Athol K. All right. And so you're gonna have to bolt on some stuff before you get here. I just jumped straight to this one. I'd read the other book. I'd read Ultimate Self-Confidence several years before, so I started with this. And this gets you up to speed real quickly, okay? But I don't want to freak everybody out, but that is. So however you want to, these are the order that we read them. First, we go here on No More Mr. Nice Guy. And it talks about fit tests. But you've got to start passing fit tests. Now, listen, fit test on your outside, if you don't pass the fit test, again, I'll say it again, you're not going to have any validational sex, okay? And so you've got to start doing that. Now, the other one, the third book, I'm going to put that up there, Married Man, okay? You can look up Married Man. It's on Amazon, Athol K. You have to excuse my writing. Again, we're coming from the bunker. We're all in different locations. We're not in an ideal classroom like we ordinarily would be. So you have to deal with my handwriting here a little bit. I think for me, on the review side, where am I at on the review side on here? Okay. You change you. That's really just huge. Okay. Then I think for me, Crazy Gap, those are my big ones right there. And I think if I had to go a third one, fit test concepts. Okay. Fit tests. So for me, you change you, Crazy Gap, and fit test. Those are the biggest ones for me. I love all the stuff about David too, and we can see all this stuff. We didn't see David figure all that out until he started changing himself, really. Okay. But Crazy Gap, we'll go back to over and over. Let me put mine up again on the review. You change you, the Crazy Gap, the fit tests. These are all, now, if you jumped in here and you thought, man, I got a good Bible study. It's about man, something about being a man and hoo-ah and all this deal. And, listen, this is a different kind of a study here, okay? And so talking about you change you, awareness, Crazy Gap, fit tests, you're not going to find this in almost any other man's group out there as far as Bible-oriented stuff. So this is very different. So right now you're probably going through weird stuff in your head. We're going to cut this off, and we're going to shut this recording down. We'll be on here for a few minutes talking about other things. Getting ready for other things that we have obligations for. So if you have anything, questions that come up, again, send us a note at Crusader 1921. Okay. Crusader 1921. I'll put that up here. Crusader.
Can I say one thing about the books?
Yep.
You're probably not going to find those in the Christian bookstore. Maybe the middle one, maybe Ultimate Secrets. They might be able to order it for you. But one of the things that we always say is when we read these books is you take the good and leave the bad. If something doesn't hit you just right, then just leave it and move on, because there's nuggets in there that you're not going to find anywhere else. And so take the good, leave the bad. And I'll bet if you're like me, as you read it, all of a sudden you're going to start going, that's why God said this. And that's why God said that. And that's why this happened. And that's why that. And you'll start making all these biblical connections. And so, it's not necessarily they're Christian books. And, I want to make sure that people know that before they read them. But there are so many. They're all based in Christian principle because they all have truth in them. And God is a God of truth. And so if there's truth in these books, then that's where it came from. The source is God. And so, they're not, the language might offend. But like I said, take the good, leave the bad.
I think it's just like in our group, like how we talk. We try to keep things pretty clean, but you know what, listen, every once in a while on emotionally driven content, stuff will come out. I'm okay with it. I don't worry about it. Listen, and guys, they're so frustrated so many times that things are emotionally log jammed in. And if they have to let stuff flow out, however the process, I don't care. I just want them to help improve themselves and get this content. I don't care how it looks all the time, okay? And how it looks on an end product on Jimmy Joe, that's going to be different from Freddie or whoever, okay? And however they get to that, I think it's just like, listen, man, I don't care how you go to heaven, okay? If you're frightened to get there, if you're terrified or shamed, I don't really care. I just want you to go to heaven, okay? It's like this stuff. I don't care how you get to be more of an alpha. I just want you to get there. Hopefully you can do it in a compassionate, way where you're treating people honorably that we talked about, and that's fine. But that's where we're at. We've got a lot of things we're going to. This is only week 1 in all of this, guys. So I'm excited for all this. As you guys go through the week, if you need anything, get a hold of us. We'll come back next week. We'll go class 2. Remember, next week, the unforgivable sin, okay? You'll really like this. There's a lot of functional practice stuff in here that you can use tomorrow in your relationships, whether you're single or married. That'll help you in the dating world or in the bedroom, wherever, depending on your situation. So we're glad to have you here early 2020. Sorry for all this stuff as far as the handwriting and the remote location, but I'm not too sorry. So don't worry about it. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks for being here, and you guys have a great week. Thank you.